The internet has gone mad this week over scandals at the Olympics in Paris. From the opening ceremony to a gay couple in the audience to a women's wrestling match between two women. So let's talk about Paris. This episode is brought to you by ProfessorPride.com, where we offer hundreds of ways to show off your pride and learn more about the LGBTQ community. Check it out now and support our work at the link below. Far-right Christians around the world went crazy for absolutely no reason this week, proving once again that they want so badly to be victims that they make wild shit up to play the victims even when they're not. For instance, you might have seen this depiction during the opening ceremony, which portrayed a version of the Feast of Dionysus, which was a Greek festival in the 5th century, in which everyone chows down on a table full of food while the playwrights competed to entertain the people of Athens. This Feast of Dionysus is what this scene at the Olympics was based on. But since Paris put drag queens in the Dionysus scene, Christians around the world started spreading the lie that Paris was instead making fun of the Last Supper painting, where Jesus was having dinner with his disciples. But it's important to note here, historical records show Christians are the ones that stole the story of Dionysus in the first place, and adapted it into what would later become the Last Supper, to fit the narrative to their audience of Christian followers. And no historical records can be found showing the Last Supper even happened with Jesus other than one book. But if this was mocking the Last Supper, which it was not, I can see where Christians were coming from here. They would certainly never depict such a deeply religious painting into something political or offensive, I say sarcastically. You also might have seen the story of UK springboard diver Tom Daley, who won a silver medal this week with his husband, Dustin, and their 2 sons in the crowd, both wearing a "That's My Papa" shirt and his husband blowing him kisses. And we just want to say a big congrats to Tom for his medal and an absolutely adorable family. Amazingly, this got very little attention from even those in the LGBTQ community, because so many Christians were already focused on the false Last Supper scandal from the opening ceremony. But the biggest scandal so far has been between Algeria and Italy in women's boxing. And you might have heard this story involves the transgender community. But once again, the far right wants so badly to be a victim, they made it all up. So here's what really happened. During the first round of the Olympic boxing matches earlier this week, Imane Khelif in the red from Algeria faced off against Carini in the blue from Italy. They exchanged a few good hits on each other, but then just 46 seconds into the match, Angela tapped out and quit, allowing Algeria to move on to the second round. Rather than shaking her opponent's hand like any good sportsman does, Angela doesn't shake hands with Imane. Instead, Angela breaks down and cries in the ring, sinking to her knees. But this is to be expected when you lose at the Olympics. It's the highest level anyone in your sport can compete in, and a place you've trained all your life to be, and you lose in 46 seconds. Angela later does a press interview where she says, quote, "I felt severe pain in my nose, and with the maturity of a boxer, I said enough, because I didn't want to, I couldn't finish the match." It's important to note here that neither of the 2 contestants, neither of their countries that they represent, nor Paris officials, nor the Olympic Committee itself, disagrees with who won the match. All of them happily agree that Angela quit, and Imane Khelif won the match fair and square. But that didn't stop the internet from going wild this week. Far-right groups and individuals in the United States and UK, like Libs of TikTok, Elon Musk, Logan Paul, and J.K. Rowling, made up baseless lies about Imane Khelif, and said Angela, who quit fair and square, should be the winner and move on to round 2. Their argument is solely based on something that happened in 2023. Last year, Imane Khelif was disqualified from the World Championship Women's Wrestling Tournament, which has nothing to do with the Olympics or the Olympic Committee, after failing an unspecified gender eligibility test. The key word there is unspecified, because no one yet knows what that test was besides the athlete herself and that world championship. Now, it has been rumored that Imane has a Y chromosome in her DNA, which is why she might have failed that test last year. But females can have a Y chromosome in some cases, and this points to her at best having an intersex condition, and at worst could lead to her having some increased risk of health issues later in life, not related to her boxing because women with this condition sometimes have those health complications. So let's make this very clear. Imane is a woman. She is not in any way transgender and never was. But that didn't stop the internet from calling her transgender anyway, and saying Angela Carini should have won the match even though she quit fair and square. It's important to note that Algeria, where Imane Khelif is from, it is illegal to be transgender there. So they would never ever put a trans athlete on their Olympic team, no matter the Olympic rules. So we can say with 100% certainty that Imane Khelif is not transgender. Even if she was, which again she is not, trans women are women, and the International Olympic Committee, which oversees all the rules and regulations of the Olympic Games, the highest sporting body in the world, keep in mind, ruled in 2021 that transgender athletes could compete according to their gender identity. This year, long ahead of the Paris Games, the Olympic Committee even released a 6-page document detailing the 10 principles which it describes as, quote, grounded on the respect for internationally recognized human rights that sports competitions should follow. This doubled down on their ruling that trans women are women and should compete in women's sports. So even if Imane was trans, the IOC would allow her to compete against Angela anyway. But again, Imane is not trans. Imane is a cisgender female. So all of the people who are spreading this story as if Angela was competing against a man are lying or spreading a lie without knowing it. She lost fair and square and cried because for many athletes, this is the best they're ever going to do. And they worked all their life to be there just to lose fair and square in 46 seconds. It's obviously not the best moment in Angela's life to lose like that. But just to show you how stupid this scandal is, there is an actual trans athlete competing in boxing this year in the Paris Olympic Games. His name is Hergie Bacyadan, and he is a Filipino boxer. But according to the IOC rules put in place in 2021, you have to have started hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, to compete according to your gender identity. So at this year's games, Hergie, who was born presenting as female, is competing in the women's 75 kilogram classification. Plus, 2 days ago, Hergie lost in an early match in the Paris Games. This doesn't fit the hate group narrative that trans people are cheating to win competitions because Hergie already lost, and he competed in the sport matching his sex assigned at birth instead of his gender identity. So you won't hear anything about Hergie from the far right this year. My point is the IOC and the Olympics are pretty solid in their support of the transgender and gay communities. It's time we leave them govern their own games and stop telling them how to write their own rules. Better yet, if the conservatives want to be upset about something so badly and use their Olympic-level talents of being Karens, why don't they complain about Olympic swimmers at the top of their careers having to swim in water contaminated with poop and deemed unsafe to swim in until a last-minute test was done by the Paris Olympic Committee themselves? Or maybe they can complain about the Olympians having to stay in very hot hotel rooms without any air conditioning until the USA and UK complained about the heat levels and had to, at our own team's expenses, add air conditioning units to our own dorms, leaving other countries without any air conditioning to this day. Or maybe they can complain about how Paris didn't have enough food for the athletes to eat for the first few days of the competition, because athletes competing in sporting events would certainly want to go on a diet immediately before their biggest event. You see, there's plenty to complain about that is really happening in Paris. We don't have to make things up and lie about people just to score a point for a narrative here. But because there will no doubt be more scandals in Paris before the closing ceremonies, please, just take a moment and ask yourself if what you're reading is believable before you share it. For example, a country that outlaws being trans would never send a trans athlete to compete. A world event on this level would never make fun of a religion that is sacred to many countries in that world event. If something sounds too stupid to be true, it typically is. And chances are, if neo-Nazis like Elon Musk, Logan Paul, J.K. Rowling, and terrorists like Libs of TikTok are saying anything, it's almost guaranteed to be one of the dumbest things a human being can possibly say. And when in doubt, just know that the internet will probably be stupid most of the time. If you'd like to support our show, check out ProfessorPride.com for hundreds of ways to show off your pride, including LGBTQ books, magnets, pins, umbrellas, digital downloads, and more. And special thanks to our members and loyal subscribers who proudly support our work providing LGBTQ education and resources. Please subscribe or click on this video to watch more.